Hello and welcome back to Downtime Activities. Matthew here, and today I'm going to be going over my build for a witch character in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. There's lots of different ways to build a witch in D&D, and this is my particular take on it that I think does a good job of hitting both the kind of creepy necromantic side of witchcraft as well as the nature side. So let's check out the build. Unlike my previous 5th edition character builds on this channel, I'm not going to do a level-by-level full breakdown of this character build, mainly because this one's pretty straightforward after you get out of the character creation and first couple levels. Instead of doing a bunch of kind of weird different classes combining and dips in different classes to make this character, we're going to be going straight 1 to 20 in one class. Before we get to that though, let's talk about the race that I'm going to be using for my build of a witch. And that's going to be the Hexblood, which is by far the best witch race to play. It will give you a +2 and a +1 in 2 different stats of your choice, or a +1 in 3 different stats of your choice. It'll give you the creature type Fey. You can be a medium or small creature. I vote medium. You will get a speed of 30 feet, and with the Ancestral Legacy, you could choose to kind of have other movements and stuff like that from other races. I'm going to go with just straight Hexblood here for 2 additional skills. You'll also get 60 feet of Dark Vision, as well as the Eerie Token ability, which is a very creepy, witchy way to kind of send telepathic messages or spy on creatures by removing a piece of yourself, such as a lock of hair, and leaving it with that person. It'll also give you access to a couple of different spells through the Hex Magic feature, which gives both Disguise Self and the Hex spell as free once-a-day spells, and also lets you cast them with your normal spell slots if you have Spellcasting. This is the start of how we're going to build this character. The idea behind this character is to play a druid straight 1 to 20, but through a combination of background, race, and our type of druid we're going to play, we're going to give ourselves access to a lot of spells that druids normally wouldn't have that are very witchy spells. And it starts right here with that Hex Magic, giving us Hex, probably the most witchy spell of all time, as well as the Disguise Self spell, even though we're going to be a straight-up druid. Next, let's go over the background, and this might be a little divisive. There's a lot of strong opinions on certain backgrounds, specifically the backgrounds from the Strixhaven school that give additional spells that the players can know and kind of add spells to their list. I personally don't have an issue with these in my games, typically, so long as I have a conversation with the player about it, and it's really useful here to give us access to more witchy, kind of mind-messing spells that druids just don't get. If your DM or GM is not comfortable or doesn't like the use of these, then you can forego this. It just makes for a better character overall, I think. The Silver Quill background is actually the one we're going to go with. The Witherbloom probably kind of makes more sense as a witchy sort of character, but we're going to get to why that's not our background in just a second. The Silver Quill background will give us Intimidation and Persuasion as skills, 2 languages of our choice, some miscellaneous equipment, and the important piece, the Silver Quill Initiate feature. This will give us additional spells on our spell list that aren't normally on the Druid spell list. First level spells that we're going to get are Dissonant Whispers and Silvery Barbs, 2 very useful spells. Second, we'll get Calm Emotions and Darkness. Third, Beacon of Hope and Daylight. Fourth, Compulsion and Confusion. And 5th level, Dominate Person and Rary's Telepathic Bond. These spells add into that repertoire of non-druid spells that we're going to have access to that will make our character have lots of options for kind of witchy effects. A lot of these specifically are going to be mind-altering effects, the witch casting curses of the mind on their opponent and controlling the minds of their enemies. I find these to be very cool, kind of creepy, dark spells in a lot of ways, so I think they fit the overall aesthetic really well. With our race and our background selected, all that's left is our class, and that class, as I mentioned before, will be the Druid. And apart from our Druid circle choice, this character is a straight-up Druid. It's Druid 1 to 20. I will give an option later on in this video for a multi-class that you could do if you're so inclined, but really I think this works great as just going straight Druid the whole time. When choosing your Druid abilities, just be thoughtful about the kind of spells you're taking and the kind of animals you're changing into with your wild shape. Cantrips like Infestation, for instance, make a lot more sense for a witch to be casting than a lot of the other druid cantrips. Similarly, with all your other spells, just choose spells that feel witchy. Our build will provide extras of those with our background and our race choice and that kind of stuff, but there's lots of very witchy feeling kind of nature but corrupt and twisted and blighted sort of spells that the druid normally has access to, and those in combination with these other spells we're adding makes for a really cool repertoire of witch spellcasting. Lastly, with that class choice, wild shape, as I mentioned before, choose forms that kind of make sense for a witch. This can be lots of different things depending on the kind of aesthetic of the witch you're going for. The classic Witch of the Wilds turning into a wolf makes a lot of sense. I personally love the idea of turning into a panther, especially at some of the earlier levels. It hits that requirement, and it's basically just a giant black cat. Doesn't get much witchier than that. For our circle choice, at second level, we're going to go with the Witherbloom Druid Circle, and this is an Unearthed Arcana circle. Technically not exactly a circle at all. All the different Strixhaven schools, all the different options there, were built in this Unearthed Arcana as sort of plug-and-play options for multiple different spellcasting classes, so we're going to use it plugged into the Druid here. The Witherbloom Druid is going to give us options for additional spells that we will have access to. These spells will both be spells that are added to our list as a druid, but also considered to be always prepared specifically as a druid, so it won't count against the other spells that we can prepare and be ready to cast each day. And those spells are as follows. Upon taking this at second level, we will get the Spare the Dying cantrip, as well as the first level spells Cure Wounds and Inflict Wounds. Later on, we'll get the third level spells Lesser Restoration and Ray of Enfeeblement, the fifth level spells Revivify and Vampiric Touch, the 7th level spells Blight and Greater Restoration, and the 9th level spells Anti-Life Shell and Mass Cure Wounds. These abilities, these spells, are very witchy, most of them. It's a lot of draining life force, and it gives us some kind of good healing usefulness as well. The whole class in general really does that. It's this beautiful balance between necrotic, evil kind of wilting, as well as the blooming and curing of wounds and healing of your allies, oftentimes at the expense of your opponents. This feels very witchy to me, and I think works really well here, and especially in concert with all those other spells we're getting, gives us a huge list of very witchy spells to cast. The other ability we're going to get at second level when we take this circle is the Essence Tap ability. It has kind of two ways it can be used. One is a self-heal that allows us to expend our hit dice, and the other is a way to replace the damage we're dealing with necrotic and ignore resistance to necrotic damage, which helps make it so some of our less witchy spells still feel pretty witchy when they're dealing that necrotic damage. At level 6, this will give us the Witherbloom Brew ability, which gives us some kind of cool, unique witches potions we can make that'll either heal or poison or give resistance to different damage types and stuff like that. They feel very much like a witch with her cauldron, his or her cauldron, brewing up these potions and making kind of a witch's brew, just like the feature says. At level 10, we'll get an ability that'll give us some additional healing or necrotic damage each turn. And at level 14, we'll get their kind of capstone ability, which is the Withering Vortex. And that's an ability that lets us heal some other people around us by sapping life force from others when we deal necrotic damage. Same as a lot of this class, it's that Wither and Bloom side of things will be both causing the necrotic damage and draining that life force to heal our allies. And that's pretty much it. That's the build. There's some other stuff I'm going to go over in just a second, but the basic build itself is very simple. It is just this Unearthed Arcana Witherbloom Druid, combined with that Hexblood race and the Silverquill College background to give us lots of spell options. This character will kind of feel like a Swiss Army knife in a lot of ways, because they'll have so many different spells they can plug in, so many additional ones on what the Druid normally would, and a lot of those options feel very witchy and witchcraft-like, so it hits that aesthetic really well for me. The last couple things I'm going to go over, firstly, is going to be some feats to consider. There's a number here that I'd go over. You can really take whatever you want. One to shy away from is Elemental Adept. It seems like a good one because we're going to be dealing so much necrotic damage, but it's really not worth it because we can already ignore resistance to necrotic damage, and the small damage buff that comes with that feat isn't worth it on its own. So I'd just skip over Elemental Adept altogether. Some that are worth taking, though, are ones like the Warcaster feat, which will give us advantage on our concentration checks, and will allow us to use spells for attacks of opportunity. I also really like Eldritch Adept, which will let us take a Warlock invocation, and there's lots of creative witchy stuff you can do with that. And last, one of my favorites is Shadow Touched, which gives us a once-a-day free invisibility, as well as a first-level Necromancy or Illusion spell of our choice, and will also allow us to cast those spells with our spell slots. This will further expand our options of non-druid spells that will feel kind of witchcrafty. Lastly, a multi-class consideration you could do is to take a dip into the Grave Cleric. It'll give us some additional kind of witchy spells and also give us a cool, useful ability that lets us kind of 2-for-1 our necromancy cantrips, hitting multiple people with them. This works pretty well with the rest of the build of this character and mechanically is pretty good, but unless you had a kind of cool reason for why, maybe your witch has made some pact or has some deal with a grave entity or power from beyond the grave, that could be cool for a witch, but if it's not really fitting the kind of character you're going for, it's not mechanically powerful enough that you really have to do it. It's just an interesting option that I thought I'd throw out here. That has been my witch build in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. I hope you found it cool. If you want to, go ahead and give it a try in your game. If you have any other takes you've done, kind of ways that you've gone about building a witch, please throw those down in the comments below. Whatever class, race, sort of combinations, or multi-classes that worked well for you. Now go forth, slay dragons, sling spells, roll dice, and enjoy your downtime activities.